Join in with Uncommon Women Podcast, a dope podcast to bring light to reality from real life people sharing real life stories with a host of women having real life talk, the good and the bad, with no judgment. Uncommon Women's Loyalty is here to support those that need a safe space to speak their truth and rawness to the world. Tune in, relax, take notes, and let's vibe. Here are your hosts, Uncommon Women.
Thank you for tuning in to Uncommon Women. I'm Shanera.
And I'm Jenny Lee.
And for those of you that are new to the Uncommon Women podcast, be sure to like, share, and promote our page. We are all about uplifting, encouraging, and just giving women a safe space and opportunity to speak on their testimony. Without further ado, we are actually on season 6. Season 6 with Kia Twyman, born and raised in Coatesville, PA, a student of a university that once denied her, which we'll later get to into her testimony today. But by the grace of God, he's been paving a way to victory as she's currently living her childhood dream as an RN nurse, who was once actually told she didn't have what it takes to become a nurse. Today, she's closing out season 6 to speak on how rejection and pain has been her stepping stone to becoming the woman who she is today. So thank you, Kia, so much for closing out season 6 and giving us an opportunity to share and hear your testimony today. We truly appreciate it. And definitely representing Coatesville, PA. Absolutely. Hey. So before we actually get into your story, can you tell us, something you like to do on your spare time or your free time besides, saving the lives of others?
Right. Well, the majority of my time, I do enjoy spending time, with my family, my grandmother. I try to check in, and spend time with her right now, as she is aging. Sometimes, especially after working a 12-hour shift, what I really need to do, I try to recoup for about a day or so. And then, I might branch out, shop, hang out, take a nice walk. I had a busy, summer, which was good. I did more than what I had planned to do. So wintertime is coming. I'll see. I tend to hibernate.
Yes, I see you got your hoodie on. So you
yes. I'm already preparing. So
did you go anywhere this summer? You said you did a lot.
Yeah, I just did like little small, like short travels. Went to visit family in Georgia. Just little quick trips and things like that. Just came back though, as I'm speaking, as we're closing out, actually going into the fall, I just came back from the Woman Evolve conference, which was that was awesome. So that was like a nice trip to the conclusion of my summer. I got to go see Sarah Jake Roberts. I went with some excellent women, and we had a good time. Stayed for about 3 or 4 days, and it was just like the anointing in that place was just awesome. I mean, it was just like, I can't wait to go back. I can't wait till 2024. I'll just say that.
Yes, I've seen Sarah when she came in Philadelphia, and she is so anointed. Like, you can feel it all in the room too. And I was disappointed I wasn't able to get into Texas this year, but I definitely want to see next season what she has in store, because she's amazing. And if anyone's listening and hasn't seen her in person, that's like something you want to go to.
Have to.
Definitely.
You have to. And I'm gonna tell you, even
my bucket list for next year.
Please make it your. I'm telling you, Philly. I seen her in Philly too one year, but being in this atmosphere with the women, the multitude of women that was in that place. I mean, I think they said it was about 40,000 plus.
Wow.
And that's not even including some of the men who were there as well.
Wow.
And it was just so anointed, so spirit filled. It was like, you left out of that place like, listen, you left out of that place.
That's probably not right.
You be having you ready to square up. Yes, it was. I loved it. I enjoyed every bit of it.
That's amazing. And was you able to get some of the good food in Texas? Like, there's so many amazing restaurants in Texas. Did you get to try any of the
I think we ate
Black-owned
at one.
businesses?
We didn't go out. We spent most of the time at the conference and ate there at the stadium. Their prices was, but we kind of ate there mainly because we spent most of our time there at the conference. Like, you pretty much was at the conference for most of the day.
So it was a whole
They had
weekend
some
conference.
really good lineup.
okay.
Yes. I think one time the night before we left,
Mm.
maybe we went out to eat. I can't remember where that restaurant was, unfortunately, but it was like a restaurant. It was like a seafood restaurant. So we did go out to eat at one time, but we had a beautiful Airbnb. So we did cook there, had a nice breakfast there, and spent time there for some of our meals. But other than that, we spent the majority of the time at the conference. Like, you couldn't leave.
In the
There was
presence.
like no point of leaving. Like,
Yeah.
we needed to stay put.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, soaking in that presence. It's nothing like that. Nothing like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So let's get into God's presence and how before we get into that, the transition of this beautiful woman that you are today. Can you tell us a little bit about your life and how was your life growing up?
Well, growing up, my life was, I would say, it wasn't not too uncommon. I came from, unfortunately, my mom and dad, they never married, and eventually they split, and my grandmother pretty much raised me the majority of the time. My mom and dad were in my life, but my dad was, at some point during my teen years, my dad had moved away. So he was, though we were close, but we were distant. He wasn't always hands on, but he
Right.
was there. I mean, I knew my dad, but he was not in the home. And so I grew up very family oriented, actually. I'm blessed in that way. I grew up around a lot of my cousins and my aunts, and my grandmother, bless her heart, and my mother, my mother also was living in another state at that time. And there was some struggles then, with addiction, so um, I believe, if I, just looking back at my childhood, in terms of rejection, I believe that I would say that I experienced that at a young age, having not grown up in a home with both parents, and even I could remember, a time watching my father, I'm screaming at the top of the steps for my father, to stay, Daddy, no, and him and my mother, I think, had split at that time. But even watching him walk out, every time I think about, when I would ask God, when did this start? That's like the memory that I have, So I believe rejection, that came upon me at a young age. And I believe many children, all of us, at some point in our life, we will all experience some form of rejection, whether it's through family, relationships, a job, but mine just happened to visit me early. I just didn't have a name for it then, but my grandmother was raised primarily by my grandmother. And so
Now, being raised by your grandmom, did she teach you all the good home cooked recipes? Like,
yes, she was a cooker. We always had a meal. Yes, we always had a meal. Every day we came home from school, there was a meal. There was a cake. There was something that she always made. She spoiled us in her own way. And if I can look back and even think about that, my grandmother showed her love in another way. The word love was not popular in our home. You didn't hear too much of "I love you, I love you."
right.
And I do believe part of that goes back, I'm sure, generations. But my grandmother demonstrated her love in other ways. We, and that's the way, we accepted that love. She took care of us, she covered us.
Okay.
She made sure we went to school, she protected us, she fed us, she clothed us. That was her love language.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know.
And we see that a lot in our culture. Like, they don't say, well, I mean, we're definitely breaking generational curses now,
Right.
but even as I was growing up, they didn't tell us that I love you. It would just be more of actions than anything.
Right.
A house over here, you got clothes, you got heat, you got food, that was their way of expressing their love and the emotional portion. So I think that's just a culture for us that we have missed.
Yes.
When emotion is important as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and I didn't. Now, my mom, on the other hand, my mom was a "I love you,"
Okay.
and so my mom, she had no problem with saying, "I love you," that just that flowed from her, But,
okay,
I'm
so
sorry,
speaking of your parents, since I said speaking of your parents, how is your relationship with them now? Since I know you probably felt rejected from them leaving you. So how is your relationship with them now?
Oh, me and my mother are close. It took some of the work of God, but we were always close, but there was always some unspoken resentment there, and isn't it amazing how I feel like I had more resentment towards my mother than my father. And I don't know why that was, but I did. Everything was my dad, daddy this, daddy that, and so when I got older, I think that there was some resentment that was building over time, but I didn't know. I didn't recognize it, I I was always a protector of my family. I was on my mother's side, I was the oldest of three boys. And then on my father's side, I was the second oldest, and so, but I was always protective, and if, whatever they needed, I was there. I was always like hands on, as much as I could be with my siblings. And they kind of relied upon me. I was almost like a second mother, to them. And so I found a sense of importance in that, right? As a nerd, as a sister, as an older sister, there was like a sense of importance. There was a sense like where I felt like I was needed. And it made me feel good to, at one point, there was a time where it made me feel good that I could be there, for my siblings. I could be there for my brothers. I could, be there for my mother, but as time, went on, a resentment began to kind of build up. And I didn't realize that the seeds that were being planted, it was just growing and growing. And I didn't notice what was going on. I didn't take notice to it until I went through something that took me into that place of depression. And I was able to then recognize it as, this is a spirit of rejection that here, it's like a ugly spirit that just lies dormant within. And it doesn't rear its ugly head until something devastating happens in your life. Yep. Okay. So I'm close with all of my siblings. We were always close, thank God. Even with my dad being distant, my siblings on my father's side, even when we were still close. And of course I was close with my siblings on my my mother's side. So I was grateful for that. That even though in terms of my siblings on my father's side, we grew up in different households, but we were close.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that was beautiful. But I was just like to my younger siblings, the big
mom.
The second mom. Yeah.
So with you being, feeling like, being the second mom to your siblings, and do you believe that, you had to bury some of your emotions and just kind of go with the flow of everything because you had, to take on this big responsibility of, basically leading your siblings? Do you When was that transition in your life where you was like the aha moment where you had realized you had a lot of hurt and pain and resentment in your life? Like,
Oh,
did something happen before you realized that you were depressed?
I don't know. I would say, growing up, people would always tell me, Kia, you got to take care of you. I didn't feel it at the time. I just was flowing. This is what I had to do. I was a big sister. And this is what I had to do. I had to protect my brothers. I mean, my grandmother raised us, but I was still, my grandmother raised us, and my mom, they were all still in the picture, but I felt a sense of responsibility as an older sister that I still had to in some way protect them. And so I really I really can't say exactly when I remember when the aha moment came, because I was just moving and flowing, but people were telling me, Kia, you gotta chill out.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta learn to say no, you gotta take care of you.
Mm.
And
Autopilot.
yeah, I was on,
Yeah.
I didn't really, and so
Going and
I
going and
didn't
going.
realize, yeah, I didn't realize, and I didn't have a problem with it because it was like their minds, that's their minds. They
Mm-hmm.
belong to me, but so I think the fact that I could do, and that's how I demonstrated my love. See, the same way in
Mm.
the doing. I wasn't a I love you person, because it wasn't, I love you wasn't really, that wasn't the thing, but I was a doer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I demonstrated my love, by what I could do. And through that, I felt a sense of importance. Like I was needed. I was
Mm-hmm.
needed, they needed me. Um, but my aha moment, I can't really say exactly when my aha moment really came. I would say, when people would tell me that I needed to start doing for me, I would kind of reject them. Reject
Mm-hmm.
that. I was in a relationship for a long time, and everybody was, you're in a relationship now, you gotta, and I would reject that advice. But I think the aha moment came when I went through depression. When I actually, that spirit of rejection actually came upon me, and it took me into a dark place. It took me into a place of depression, and I was forced to face everything that I didn't face, or I didn't know that I had to face. I
Mm.
was forced to face all those things, and it was amazing that at that time, what God had showed me, when I thought that, when I went through that depression, I thought that it was just related to, I thought it was just because I just went through a relationship, a relationship ended unexpectedly, and I thought that that's what that was from. But when
Mm.
God began to show me,
And
he
reveal everything.
showed
Come
me,
on.
this has nothing to do with, this is only a small part of your depression. He began to show me that there were layers of wounds that were deep within that had to be dealt with. And so I did not know, still at that time, I didn't know that this was all surrounded by what had come upon me at a young age,
Mm.
so I had to go back and look, like, what happened. This is deeper than this. I'm crying over this, but the wound is really not from this, it's from this, is,
Mm.
and
That
so
was a band-aid. That was just a band-aid
that
surgery.
was a band-aid. And you know what,
Like, it's so
Shira?
deep in this.
The crazy thing is, God showed me that. He showed me there was a band-aid on my leg. But when I went to pull the band-aid back, the wound was so
Mm.
deep and so big. And he showed me, this is deeper than what you know. And this is going to take, like, correct surgical. Like, there was some surgery that needed to be done here. Like, now, this ain't just this, daughter. It's more than this. It's deeper than this. So that's when I believe my aha moment came, and I was forced to face and put a name. Put a name. That's another thing.
Wow.
I didn't know that, I had issues with rejection and insecurity and fear. And, but fear, I kind of, no. I struggled with fear at a young age. I did. All these things I did. I struggled with fear at a young age, but I didn't know this was all surrounded by trauma from rejection, So I didn't learn that stuff until I became an adult, almost pushing 40, until I was, that's when I kind of recognized it.
So what steps did you take to, transition into your life to, be able to overcome that and then see the obstacles of, the childhood and, the things that you've been through as far as relationships. And we talked a little bit, outside of today's show, but even, things that you experienced when you were in school. How did you get to the point of, unraveling all that stuff that you were going through?
Well, when I began to look back and look back at the choices that I made, the relationships, that and the people that I had chosen, um, it became clear to me how I truly seen myself. Though I thought I was this person of importance, right? Yeah, I'm like this protector and I'm this and I'm that, but inwardly I was struggling with security issues. And the thing is, when I first, there was two parts to this, because the first situation that really took me um, into that place of depression and darkness, I thought I had dealt with it, right? You think you dealt with it. You do the counseling, you do a little bit of counseling, you read your word and I'm getting closer to God and things like that, right? And it took a while, and I thought I had come out of it. But the thing is, I was single. I had remained single for a while after that. I didn't date for a long time after that. So of course, if I didn't date for a long time after that, I'm not going to know that that wound is still there, right? I'm thinking that wound is healed, it's closed.
You haven't been tested yet.
I forgot that God will allow us to be tested, right? So, I'm like, okay, I remained single. I did the work. I did the counseling, spending time. I'm getting closer to God. I'm back in the church. I'm singing on the choir. I'm doing all these things, and but I'm not being tested because I chose to remain single after the first situation. I'm like, I'm just gonna wait for my husband. I'm just gonna wait for God to bring me my husband. And so I remained single, and then unexpectedly, I decided, you know what, God, whatever you got, I'm good. I'm good. And then I had another. I started dating again. Wasn't expecting it, but it happened, and I started dating again, and then it was through that situation that I learned, that I began. Oh, wait a minute.
It just came back up. It just came right back up.
This is coming right back up. This is not done. I'm not done. So I began to have feelings of fear and paranoia, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is still here. And so that's what it did. It made me feel like I was good, but it was, again, lying dormant. As long as I wasn't being tested, I wouldn't have known. And so that's when it was through that second encounter that those feelings began to come back. And that's when I recognized that, no, I'm not healed, and around that time, unfortunately, my dad had passed away unexpectedly and everything like that. And so I was already kind of like grieving over my father. And then the situation that, that I was in, that ended, and so now that's, a little bit more grief on top of grief, right? Because
Right.
they're like, well, Dad, where everybody, everybody,
I'm already going through one thing, and now this, like,
yeah, right. I'm like, oh my God. So it was then, I think,
one thing after another, one thing after another.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, and so you're for now, God. Now I was like, okay, I have to, this is not over. I have to deal with this, because what should have been just a simple, like, it's all good. Unfortunately, I'm sorry it didn't work out. Sorry I couldn't work out. It's all good. Turned into grief, and I'm like, why? I'm grieving yet again. Over a man. What's going on? It wasn't dealt with. So this time, after, I went through what I went through, I really I had to make up my mind, and I had, it was through God had, he had shown me, because the feelings of, like, you felt like, wow, this happened to me twice. And I kept saying, God, how'd you let this happen to me twice? If you love me, why'd you let this happen to me
like,
twice?
I'm doing good. I've been doing everything I was supposed to be doing.
Right. Why can't I leave somebody?
Right.
So I was like, come on now, give me a win, But so at any rate, it was just like, okay, God, like, what is going on? And so I believe God allowed me to be tested for me to see that I wasn't fully healed and delivered from that spirit. And so this time I had to do the work, I had to do the work, and I had to make up my mind, it really is about making up your mind. At the end of the day, you have to make up your mind, because I felt myself just in such a dark place. Just, 1 minute, happy, the next minute I'm crying, like, God, like, why, and I'm like, no, my emotions were too unstable. And through that, God showed me that I was basically giving away my spiritual authority. He, it was like, I've given you the keys to the kingdom. I've given you the power and the authority, right? But you're throwing it away. You're throwing it away. You're giving it to the, and so
when you too much energy,
I was giving too much, and he was like, you're throwing away what I gave you. Like, what are you doing? And when he showed me that, I was like, oh, okay. I had to get serious, and I had to make my mind up. And it didn't happen right away. I still had some emotional, incidents. I still had some moments where I cried, because I was still grieving over my father too. And isn't it just like the enemy to want to wreak havoc in your life when you're already going through grief? So I was already going through. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, the perfect opportunity, right? For, not saying that wouldn't have happened, right? I'm not saying that it wouldn't have happened, but it was just like at the time that it happened, it was like, what? So there was already a grief from my father there too, that I believe spilt over into that situation, and so I had to make up my mind this time. Like, I got to do the work. I had to. I can't allow this to go into any other relationship or opportunity that God has for me, And so I said, you know what, God, no matter, what I felt, no matter what I was feeling, because everything, we tend to go off of feelings, right? So if I wasn't feeling good, then I ain't good. If I wasn't feeling loved, then I must not be loved, right? And so, like, the word of God says, faith without works is dead. I had to say, this is not about a feeling, Kia.
Yep.
You gotta make a choice to either believe what God says about you or not, you know. And so, it took a while, but I got there. And I had to say, no, I believe. And
Mm.
even though in those moments where I struggle with my belief, I let him know,
You
God,
manifested it.
help me with my, because we all,
Yeah.
Right.
we get to those moments. And so this time I did put the work in through the word. I did some counseling, but I really made up my mind at the end of the day to trust the process and to trust the Lord.
Mm.
And that is what mainly got me through. God, your word is true. I believe your word. I believe that you will work all things out for my good.
Yeah.
I believe that you still have a purpose and a plan for me. I believe that I'm called to be a wife. I'm called to be a wife.
Come
I'm called
on.
to be a helpmeet. And so I had to begin to speak those things over me, you know, and that's
Mm.
how I got here. The
Wow.
word of God, when he says
Wow.
his word is a double-edged
Mm.
sword, I mean, when he says his word is alive,
Mm.
Right.
and it's like, oh wow, yeah, God, your word really is. It really is alive and active, right? So that's
That's
how.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Looking back at, everything that you've been through in your life and, everything that you experienced, where does your motivation come from?
Um, my motivation, where does it come from? I would say, I have some positive women in my
Mm.
life, and I've watched them from my aunt. Sarita, I watched her do something, one thing that she thought was impossible.
Mm.
She got and made it through school. I had positive women in my life. I have good friends, good friendships in my life. All these women are, most of them, they're all positive. They all got something great going for themselves. And I knew that um my motivation, I believe, came from them. My motivation came from the fact that I'm gonna tell you this, and I'll never forget this. My brother, he's under me. Duper, you might know him. Well, I remember him saying to me, and my brother Warren, they always would remind me of things that I forgot. They
Mm.
would take me back to when we were younger, and say, sister, you remember, this. And I'd be like, no, I don't remember. But they remembered something in some way that I was impactful to them.
Mm.
And so, I remember my brother saying to me, because I remember crying and telling him that I should have just went to college. I should have just walked away and went right to school and not put my focus on everybody else. And I remember
Mm.
my brother saying to me on the phone, sis, if you would have left us, I probably would be dead. And
Wow.
so that right there told me that even though, you know, I can look, even though to me it's like, even though I felt like I might have wasted some years, God had me. I
It's
believe
God's timing.
it was God's timing, and God knew that
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm.
they needed me, and so I believe my motivation comes from that. My siblings, just their love towards me. No matter what, they love me, all of them. My sister, she loves me, she looks up to me, and just having now, with my father being gone and everything like that, and how our relationship, has grown tremendously. And then, at the end of the day, me, I had to motivate me, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're alone and the enemy's telling you that
Oh.
you ain't this and you ain't that, you gotta
Mhm.
encourage yourself
Mm-hmm.
with the truth.
Yes.
You gotta be able
Yep.
to come back and encourage yourself with the truth of what you know in God's word. So that was my motivation, because my friends, they all got skills, cake decorating, wedding coordinators, interior design. They all hair. They got skills. And I used to say, God, now I know that I am not only good at being a nurse, right? I love being a nurse, but I know there's got to be something more that I'm good at, you know?
You are. You're a nurturer. People
Yeah.
love you. You care for people.
Yeah.
You
So
love
it was like,
people.
right. I was like, what is it? There's something that you put in me, you know? And so, yes, I know, I'm reminded, you know, of that scripture, you know, that, you know, he has great plans for me. And so my motivation is right there, that I know that God has great plans for me.
Yes.
I know that he has something great for me.
Wow, that is so good.
Yes.
So if you can provide,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. If you can provide some tips to any of our listeners on how to get over some rejection and to process the pain in any type of situation that they've experienced in their life, or anyone that's going through something now.
How to get over their pain. Any tips that
yeah, how to process the pain and get over their rejection.
Don't run from it. You might not know what it is, but pay attention to the patterns. I didn't pay attention to my patterns. I didn't pay attention to the fact that I was jumping in and out of relationships at a young age.
Come on.
You know, I didn't pay attention to the fact that I allowed a man who was 10 years my senior to come into my life. What was I doing at the age of 14 dating a man who was 23, 24? Where I was looking for something, you know. I didn't pay attention that from that point on, I was in and out of relationships. I felt like I needed a man, right? I had to be in a relationship. Oh, I'm done. I'm tired of you. All right, I didn't spend that time with you. You're done. I'm ready to move on. I didn't pay attention to the pattern, you know, until I was forced to, you know, and I was like, oh, this was a pattern. You know, my relationship, I was engaged. I was with a man for 10 years. You know, we was together for 10 years. And after that relationship, I remained single for 2 years. And I chose to do that. I chose to, because I had to say, Kia, like, no, you know, you need to be able to be comfortable without a man being under you. You need to know what it feels like to be without a man, because you've basically been with a man since you was a teenager. You need to be comfortable in that place, you know. And so I would say pay attention to your patterns first of all. Or are you in and out of relationships? Do you feel like you have to have a man? That's number one right there. And then you need to go before the Lord, and you need to ask him to show you, because most likely you're dealing, if you feel like you need to have a man, there's either some underlying abandonment or rejection issues. Yeah. And then that's where you need to let God come on, let him on in. You gotta let him in, yep. You know, and let him do the work. But you gotta make up your mind. See, when you know, that first time I went through that, I can't even really say that I made up my mind. I can't really say that I had made up my mind back then. I think that's why I was still struggling with it and didn't know it. I was forced to have to go through the process of healing, because I was in such a dark place that I couldn't get myself out of. So I was forced to go through the necessary steps to get me at least to a place where I could function again, right? I can somehow get some joy and peace back, because there was times that at night I would wish that day would come, and when it was day I would wish that it was night. And that's how it was. That's how it was with me. And so I was forced to have to deal with it. It wasn't really that my mind was made up. My mind wasn't really made up until the second situation occurred, and I was like, oh no, I have to cut this off at the head. It has to be dealt with. So I would say, don't run from it. Let God in. Let him show you whatever traumas. And this goes for men too, because you know, men too, they deal with it too, but they bury it, you know. And so let him in. Let him in and let him take you back to that place and let him show you, because I think we all at some point, we want a healthy relationship, right? A
Absolutely.
healthy, well-balanced
Yeah. Yeah.
relationship. And
I would hope so.
and we want our children to choose
Carry
healthy.
that on.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't want your
Yeah.
son or your daughter to choose somebody who's broken, you know. So do an inventory, let God in, make up your mind. Make up your mind. And you might not make up your mind right away. And that, it is what it is, but know that he's there and he's waiting. He's waiting for you to make up your mind so he can come in and do the surgery. Yeah.
I love that you said to let God in. And I think, sometimes when we're going through stuff, we try to just avoid situations and, you know, avoiding the situation is still going to come up. And I think a lot of people have to realize that
Yep.
it's the consistency is what changes
Yep.
the outcome of what
Yes.
we've been through.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we just do the surface of everything without knowing that you still have to do it's an ongoing thing with our journey this life. It's ongoing growing.
Yeah.
It doesn't just
Mhm.
stop.
Yes.
And even when you get in relationships and even when you have children, we have to work on ourselves daily.
Yep.
Yep.
Daily doing that check. Like I would hear
Yep.
people say the same way you would
Ooh,
go to the
every
doctor to
day.
go get that checkup. And even that, and I had nothing against counseling. I had a Christian-based counselor. That was another. I had a Christian-based counselor, who was able to walk me through those godly principles. I didn't just choose any counselor. I wanted someone who was, Christian. We had like-minded faith that
Yes.
will walk me through, those godly
Yeah.
principles, because I can't tell you how many times I've encountered in my career of people who have, been in counseling for 10 years more than, and they're working on the same issue.
Same person.
They're working
Wow.
on the same
That's
issue,
Mhm.
and that's no judgment, but you gotta,
Right.
understand, you gotta ask yourself, why am I still here? Why am I still working on this same
Yeah.
issue? So part of that, I did do a little counseling, but like I said, I had settled in my mind that I would get through this situation with the Lord. And so that's where I began to put my focus, in the Lord, and in His Word. I did buy, some books that I would try to read. I tried to journal, but my mind couldn't stay focused long enough to do it because I was constant
Constantly thinking.
constantly thinking. So the only thing I had
Yeah.
was me, the Lord, the Holy Spirit, and the Word. That's what I had. And the
Yes.
Word, and
Yeah.
prayer, praise, and worship, and so and even that was so hard sometimes, but I had to say, I had to push myself through this thing. Like, I cannot rely on my feelings to get me through this, and then I just finally, I said, God, you know what? I might not understand it all, but I'm going to choose to believe you. I believe. That's it. I don't have to understand everything to believe. You just have to get to that point, like, because it was like, God, what do you mean you love? How do you love me? Well, how does God love? Because when
You start questioning. But
mhm.
that's where the faith over
Yep.
fear comes into
Yeah.
place.
Yes, yes, yep. So, it's been a journey that is truly worth it, and yeah, I have not, I haven't arrived yet. I received, I received I'm healed, but I still press. I gotta still press. I still gotta go. I'm not going to say that, thoughts will not arrive. I will not arise, or I will not be, challenged, on some level, but the Word of God, I gotta put it here. I gotta put it here.
Mm.
So when those challenges do arise, I
You
can.
stand firm.
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. So you had mentioned that your aunt is currently in school. and you had spoke about, you being in the university that you once was denied going to nursing school at. How did it come about with you, reapplying and getting to the position of, taking a stance to be like, you know what, I'm going to try again and I'm going to do something for me?
Yes. Well, my aunt is not. She graduated.
Oh, she graduated.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, she graduated. Yeah. But for me, getting into the university,
Yes.
and I always she graduated a couple years ago. She's done, but I watched her feel like she would. She motivated me because I watched the times where she thought that she couldn't do it and she did it. And trying to oversee a household, and she felt like there was times she felt like she couldn't do it, but she did it. And so excuse me, what happened, if I can, in terms of me getting back into school, I remember being in high school. I think that I was in high school and I had took my SAT exam, and I didn't score, I can't remember what I scored, but it wasn't enough to get into Westchester. At the time, it wasn't enough to get into a university, and I remember my guidance counselor calling me down to the office, and she's going over my scores with me, and she tells me that I didn't score high enough to get into the university I applied for, and at the time, she tells me, I recommend, that you don't apply to any colleges. I recommend you just go to LPN school. I think you should just go to school to be an LPN. So I took her word. Okay, she knows best. She's the counselor. I didn't know that there was such thing as power and the power in the words that you speak. And so I did exactly what she said. I graduated high school, and I went, I became a CNA, and then I went to school, to be an LPN, which there's nothing wrong with that, and then I finally went back to school, to become an RN, but it was always something lingering in the back of my head, like I want to go back to school, and it was like I always was like I want to go to Westchester. I want to go, I want to go here. I want to go to this place. And so sometime later, I remember, I think it was my mom. My mom's another one of my biggest things. She is my biggest cheerleader. I love her dearly. I do. But I applied. I think the first time I applied, they didn't respond, but I didn't give up. I kept emailing. I emailed them, and they were like, "Oh, we didn't get your application." So I said, "Oh, okay, you didn't? Okay." So I reapplied. Sometime later, I reapplied again. And so the second time I believe I reapplied is when I got my acceptance. So it's like, wow, I finally got into the school that I was told that I didn't qualify for. And so at the time that the counselor basically told me I didn't qualify, I didn't know to tell her, right? You don't know that. I'm in high school. To tell her I do qualify, and I didn't know how to come back. I just took her word for what it was. And and so but when I finally applied and I got accepted, I was like, wow, like I'm here, this school that I've always desired to get into. I'm here, so my advice is, I don't think I went home and told my grandmom that the counselor said that to me. But I believe that was another seed planted in me, and so now you feel like you can only qualify for now I'm feeling like I only qualify for less than God's best, and I think that it's so important, even for children today as parents, like, don't let these people speak. Watch who's speaking over your child.
Yes.
It's so important, because words, they carry, they travel, and
Yeah,
so
they do.
yes. And if I just would have took the time and said, you know what, let me go back and maybe take the test again. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go back and take it again, and then I'm going to reapply again. But instead of me doing that, I allowed this counselor to tell me
lingered with it.
So it took me longer to do what could have been done, in a short amount of time.
But you got it done.
But I got it. Yes, I did. I got it done. And I have no, I don't really have any regrets about how I did it. But when I look back now that I'm, more mature in that area, I'm like, yeah, I probably, I shouldn't have gave up. I should have just went back and been like, no, I'm going to take it again,
And that's good that you matured, because me personally, I'm still healing, and I probably would have pulled up on, the counselor and been like, I got into Westchester.
I need you to think about it.
God is working.
Yes, like, listen, I need you to see the poor counselor. I don't even know what to say. Oh my God.
Your diploma, but that's just me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I need you to know. Look, you see this letter. You see what they say here. But poor thing. I can't remember who my counselor was back then. But yeah, I that's just something I never forget.
Sometimes we do that because just to prove a point. Like you said, I couldn't, but I did it.
But I did it. I did it. Yes. Yep. And sometimes it's just about knowing, being able to do what you thought you couldn't do, and knowing that you are qualified. Maybe back then I didn't know that I was qualified, but I'm qualified, right? God, I'm already qualified.
Yes, you are.
So and I encourage people with their kids, let them know, you qualify. You already qualified. Because they go out in this world, the world will eat you. What you up and spit you out. You got to put that in them early. Yeah,
I love that. So before we go into one of our closing questions, I'm going to take a quick break, a commercial break, and then we are going to ask our closing question in regards to today's testimony.
All right.
Have you recently started a business? Maybe looking to get more exposure? Are you interested in taking your business to the next level? Let Uncommon Women podcast further assist you with our business and brand promoting packages. For more information, please email us at uncommonwomenpodcast.com or reach us directly on one of our social media platforms so we can further assist you. And always remember, stay uncommon.
Thank you so much, Kia. For those of you that are just tuning in, we are just listening to her testimony in regards to, how she had to heal from rejection and pain, and not realizing that, she had a temporary fix over her issues, and how she was able to get through those issues by taking the time to, detox herself to be able to become the woman who she is today. So we definitely appreciate you for being able to be vulnerable and, sharing your testimony and sharing your story in regards to, all that you've been through, your childhood, relationships, and, even that counselor that I'm going to pull up on when I find out her name.
Well, I'll find out who she is.
But before we close out, I would like to know, is there any closing thoughts or anything that you want to say to the listeners that's tuning in and hearing your testimony before we close out on season 6?
I would say, just as I said, we have to, it's up to us to know our worth and to know what we qualify for. and to know what is less than God's best for us. You know, um, it's up to us we have to know that God desires so much more for us, and that he loves us, and that his thoughts towards us are always good. He wants us up. He don't want us down. He calls us to be up. He calls us to be the head. He calls us to be the head, not the tail. He called us to be leaders, and so I would say, for me, any relationship that you're getting into, what I learned through that process is any in new encounters or anybody that you're dating, seek God first, because those of us who are desiring to be married, and sometimes we might be praying specific prayers, and the enemy knows what you want because he studied you long enough to know exactly what you want, right? So he's going to send you something that is similar to what it is that you have been asking God for. And if you're not able to recognize it early, if you're, I can say, in that first encounter, I was so excited because I had been single that I was excited to be dating. Like, I knew that I probably should have went before the Lord, right? But I didn't want to go before the Lord. I wanted to have fun, And so I would say, seek God for, God, is this what you have for me? Is this who you have for me? And believe me, he will tell you, he will reveal it to you in one way or another. You might not hear him audibly, but something will happen that you will know. Pay attention to the conversations that you're having with that individual. There were conversations that I had, in my pattern. I was settling for conversations that I believe were inappropriate, in a way that I was allowing myself to indulge in conversations that really didn't necessarily make me comfortable, but I was compromising, right? I allowed myself to compromise in a lot of things. And so there were things that I should have kind of cut off, Another thing I noticed is that when you're dating a guy and he's always so quick to tell you what his type is, cut it off. Cut it off. Because when a guy tells you what he's typically used to dating, now you feeling like, oh, wow, well, I don't look like that, Now you, in the back of your mind, you're going to always have that in the back of your mind, right? That this is what this is what he's used to, this is what he likes, but this is not and so that sometimes can kind of put fear. You get a little, you get a little intimidated by that because you're not what he's used to dating, right? But you need to know that God created you to be different too, right? So I allowed the fear to feed, like I was allowing that fear to feed like that insecurity. I'm not what they, they like. I'm a size 2'4", These guys out here nowadays, they want thick thighs, all like that. But sometimes you can get caught up in that, and so it's like, nah, nope. God says that I'm altogether beautiful. There's no flaw in me. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and so I had to learn that, So to me, I would say to a lot of women, pay attention to the patterns, pay attention to the conversations. And if it don't feel right, cut it off. Cut it off. Go before God and seek him first, because most times it's nothing but the enemy's trying to mimic. He's trying to send a counterfeit to delay your destiny. He's trying to delay what God really has for you. And see, because I didn't recognize that, I wasted so much of my years, right? Trying to heal, trying to come back, God, every time I feel like I may have been married by now. I might have been, God probably already had my baby, like my boo lined up, but sometimes we get that fear of being alone, and we want to date and we want to have fun. And so I would say that seek God first, and God, is this who you have for me? And if it ain't, cut it off, early. Don't allow yourself to dwell in it, because that's when it makes it harder to break from it. Um, and be comfortable with being alone.
Mm-hmm.
Be comfortable with being single for a season. It's okay. I had to make myself, I had to, like, no, I'm okay with this. I'm okay. I don't have to have a man laying in a bed next to me. It would be nice, but I want my husband, I want my husband to be in the bed with me. And so that's another thing. If you're dating, maybe date in a mutual area. Don't, and not bring that man into your house, into your sanctuary. Maybe meet with him until you know for sure that this is the man that you're supposed to be with. Because what happens is you invite them into your home, you invite them into your life, you're telling them about what you've been through in a previous relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you they ain't going to do what the other dude did, right? And you're opening up to them, and there's a intimacy that forms through that, when you're not even sure if that's the one you're supposed to even be with. So now you got a soul tie with that person. And when you and then it's hard. Now you gotta God gotta try come in and break that soul tie. Sometimes it's just best to remain, just remain friends, keep it clean, and let God lead you. Let him show you if this is for you or if it's not for you.
That is so good. That is so good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kia, for coming on and sharing your testimony. And hopefully to the women, including men, listen in and listen to your testimony, because it's powerful. And then the gems that you just threw out there are very important, because we do need to seek God for any decision or anything that we do in our lives, so that it can just align with him, period. So
Yes.
Thank you again for your story. So
Yes.
Thank you to our listeners that were tuning in this evening. I want to speak on our sponsorship for our seminar. We are looking for sponsorship, as well as we are also, I want to include vendors. If you go into the link for our seminar, for I Love Myself seminar at www.uncommonwomen.event.com. There is a link there for vendors that want to come on and be a part of the seminar. This is going to be a powerful seminar. There's going to be powerful testimonies, sisterhood. There's going to be food, music, and just the presence of God there. And it's just going to be empowering for any woman that is trying to walk in their self-love and just trying to heal, and just being in that journey and being included with just being around powerful women. And thank you all again for tuning in this evening, and stay uncommon.
All right.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you've been shacking up with us for a while and haven't subscribed to our channel, what are you waiting for? Please like and subscribe to Uncommon Woman so you won't miss another episode. And remember, don't let anything or anyone affect your peace. Good vibes, and stay uncommon.